Heyo, welcome back everyone. Sim here with a first impressions video, this time for The Sinking City, a Lovecraftian inspired tale set in the sinking city of Oakmont and developed by Frogware Studios. And straight away here I will say, The Sinking City is a very well made detective game with a setting that oozes atmosphere and intrigue. In Sinking City, we play as Private Eye Detective Reed as he explores the city in search of a cause to the insanity and vision spreading both within the city and America as a whole. Now, with my first impressions videos, the goal here will be to convey my thoughts on a game after 3 hours and how the achievement progress has been thus far. With Sinking City, after 3 hours, I'm 3 cases into the main story, which consists of about 9 cases I believe, and then a series of side quests that sort of intertwine with that main story. Each case varies from about 40 minutes to around an hour and a half, which seems like a good sort of length for these. I haven't gotten bored so far with any of these. What I have played so far here is a lot of fun. Each case can be broken down into a series of interactions with NPCs. These then lead to investigation sites or crime scenes that then, based on my choices, have led to multiple smaller cases within. Case 3 in particular has been the standout with a series of unravelling and messy clues that bounce between 2 different parties who are both quite terrible in all honesty. There's not really been many good outcomes in this one. No matter what you do, someone suffers, and this was quite refreshing in an age of video games that promote the whole actions that have consequences that ultimately really don't. In this one here, it sort of felt with the climax of Case 3, no matter what I did, everyone suffered as a result. Either I helped undermine an organisation that's been really shady and has tortured people by poisoning their supply of food they're giving out for free and killing untold amount of people with poison, or I assist that group and I help them torture more people. It was a really quite dark sort of case, and I really enjoyed that sense of, okay, not all of my outcomes here are going to be good. Now for our protagonists, we have Detective Reed. He is deadpan and quite observant. He spent his time prior to being a detective in the US Navy aboard the Cyclops. That vessel then sunk at some point in a traumatic event that I think led to all of his crew being killed except for himself, and he then returned home to Boston to become a private eye, or a detective for hire. Reed is an interesting character, however he really mostly just serves as a viewpoint for us, the player, to meet the cast of quirky characters in this game. He doesn't really offer too much in the way of emotions. He at times can feel like he's just kind of reading off of a script, which sometimes that does take me out of the atmosphere a little bit, but ultimately I don't think it's too bad. I think the performance that is on display here is quite good. However, it is that cast of other characters that really is where the game's personality does shine. From the ape-like Frogmortons to the Innsmouthers, a group of fish-like folk who've recently made Oakmont their home following the Great Flood that has left the city very much submerged. The characters here are all quite interesting and are usually only assisting you to further their own goals, which I've really appreciated. No one here has really felt like a cardboard cutout, bar maybe some of the side characters where the dialogue can at times get very wooden. There was one that came to mind, I guess, where I went to the city hall to look at the archives, the newspaper archives for a case, and the woman at the front desk was very stiff. That definitely took me out of the atmosphere at that particular moment. But let's talk about the gameplay for a minute. Sinking City is largely a point-to-point game. Go here, talk to person A, go to point B, talk to person B, have some combat sprinkled in as well just to spice things up. It's not a bad loop per se, but the combat itself is probably the weakest part of the game and is really janky, especially the melee combat with the trench shovel. Reed can use both firearms or his trench shovel to take down monsters or people in Oakmont. You sort of get a bit of a variety in terms of that combat. There are creatures that have started popping up around the city after the floods, some sort of real Lovecraftian tentacle monsters, but you also have, thugs and gangsters as security guards that you're also going to have to face off at various points in the game as well. Ultimately, so far in the first 3 hours, I've really found myself just trying to avoid combat where possible, as it just doesn't feel very good. Even just the aiming of guns has not particularly been great. I am curious to see if that does change with some of the skill tree progressions. There is a skill tree in this game that sort of offers things like increased firearm damage, faster reloads, but there is also some stuff with like aim down sight speeds and stuff like that, and I am curious to see if that does make the combat better, or even if just the game adds newer enemies down the track that sort of assist with this further. But certainly at this initial stage, if I can avoid combat by like talking my way out of a scenario, or even just avoiding it and running around it completely, I will absolutely do that. There are these areas around the city called infected zones, which are these sort of blocked off districts where the monsters have completely overrun them, and anytime I've got to go through one of these to get to a quest marker, I just run straight through. I don't even try and fight the enemies, not because they're too powerful or anything, but just because the game itself doesn't really feel good fighting them, and really doesn't reward you for doing so either. You might get some crafting materials and maybe some XP, but that's really the extent of it. The game does balance its combat with a crafting system, as I mentioned just before. This allows Reed to craft things like bullets for his guns or medkits to heal, and this is quite nice. There's even some sort of additional weapons such as grenades, which I really enjoy, or traps. I haven't used traps at all, I don't think, so far, but these are nice. These do give me a little bit of variety to the combat. However, I do find that the traps don't really warrant the amount of materials that I've got to use to craft them when I can just shoot an enemy dead in a couple of bullets. The skill system does again pair well with crafting. There is a crafting skill tree that'll let you craft more bullets for less resources or more traps. I think there's even one skill in there that allows you to get the potential to earn like twice the quest rewards at the end of a quest, which is interesting. I feel like if you could save scum that, you could potentially end up quite well resourced by the end of the game, with a lot of bullets and stuff in this game. Currency is very much just a bartering system. The dollar is long gone after the floods. The strongest point so far in the game, however, is just how you progress through cases. This game is not one that gives you objective markers. You do have a map. It is a sort of street directory of the city of Oakmont itself. However, to find where someone lives, for example, you'll need to find clues around a crime scene. So say that you need to find a professor's house where he's lived during his office at the university. You have reason to believe that he is part of the murder case, so you need to go find his address. You'll need to look around the office to find sort of context clues as to where he could potentially live, such as the district of the city. You then need to go to somewhere like the town hall, for example, and then go through the newspaper archives or the population census, for example, to find the street that he will live on. Then you'll need to get out your map and manually put the marker there yourself where you want to go. And I found this so refreshing. And what made it nice too is, while yes, you then have to go out and travel to see if you got the location correct, if you got it wrong or if you jumped the gun, it's really not too much of a time punishment to get back. There's enough fast travel points in the place of phone booths to get back to the town hall and try again if need be. The game doesn't punish you for trying, and I really, really liked this, and it certainly doesn't hold your hand. It's one of those ones where I don't think you could sort of speed run through and skip all the dialogue or skip all the notes, because you would be very, very lost. You need that information, and it reminds me a lot of Morrowind from back in the day, which I really liked. I found this very refreshing. And the last thing I want to talk about here before I jump into the achievements is Traversal, because this obviously plays a massive part with getting between case to case. Traversal in Sinking City is interesting, to put it bluntly, and this is mainly because of the setting. Oakmont is flooding, and it's flooding fast. The high ground within the city can be explored on foot. This is sort of a very wet city. The place has been non-stop raining for a very long time here, and so these high points can be explored on foot. You'll find a lot of civilians roaming the street doing things like moving rubbish away and sweeping up some of the flood damage, to huddling around fire barrels for warmth, or even fishing or building bridges across the watery streets, but any low point in this city is completely flooded, and so you've got to move around these via a little boat. The boat being the Cyclops 2, which I thought was a very interesting name because the Navy boat that Reed served on prior to the events of the game was the Cyclops. I'm waiting to see if there's any comment on this from Reed himself, because it is quite an interesting little coincidence. However, there's been nothing so far. The boat itself controls well enough. Essentially, it just controls like any vehicle in, say, GTA, and so you'll be moving around between these points where you can walk by a boat. There's also the phone booths, which I mentioned before. If you find this in a district, you can then fast travel to it from other phone booths. So you can't fast travel from, say, any random point on the map. You have to go find a phone booth to then fast travel to another one. But how are the achievements? Honestly, the achievements are quite safe. There's nothing particularly difficult here. There's no difficulty one, such as beating the game on hard. Everything can be done on easy if that's what you want. There are 28 achievements in total, or 29 with the Platinum Trophy if you play on PlayStation. The bulk of the achievements are tied to decisions during both the main game and side quests. Now, nearly every achievement is missable. In fact, I think like 9/10 of the trophy list is missable because it is just actions from within a case. However, the reason that I say this is a safe game in terms of achievements is the way the game auto-saves. You typically have quite a backlog of auto-saves, so if you do make a decision that voids you of an achievement, it is very easy to just make a manual save of where you're up to, roll one of the auto-saves, pop the achievement, and then go back to your manual save. It's really not too difficult and is quite seamless. So far within my first 3 hours of the game, I've amassed 9 out of 28 achievements, as I'm playing this on Steam, and I've really enjoyed seeing the outcomes of the decisions that the achievements have forced me to make. Some of them have been quite dark. Rest in peace, Daryl, you deserved better. But with all that said, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on the Sinking City after 3 hours. I'll hopefully have the 100% review for this one out in the coming weeks, hopefully within the next fortnight. It sort of just depends on other videos that are being made at the time. If you enjoyed the video and you want more of these thoughts-based videos, please do leave a like and your thoughts on the video and the game itself. If you made it this far, tell me what game you yourself have just recently started and how you're enjoying it so far, even your achievement progress. I want to hear all of that stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you so much. And of course, happy hunting.